If you grew up without a father, or with one who was present in the building and absent everywhere else, no one told you who you were supposed to become. No one handed you the script. No one showed you, through demonstration, what a man who led himself actually looked like. That is a real loss, and I do not want to move past it too quickly. But here is what I also need to say. The absence of that script is not a sentence. It is a starting condition. And the man who receives no script has something that men who were handed one do not always develop: the capacity to write it himself. This is not a video about healing, not primarily. It is a video about building. It is about the particular calling of the man who had no father, which is not only to recover from what was missing, but to become what was missing. To become the man who teaches the next generation what he was never taught. To be the answer to the question his own father never answered. The fatherless man who rises is not just a man who survived an absence. He is a man who chose to make the absence the last in his line. The cultural conversation around fatherlessness tends to go one of two directions. The first is the therapeutic direction. Acknowledge the wound, process the grief, seek healing. This has genuine value. The wound is real, but it can also become a destination rather than a station. A man who has organized his entire identity around what he lacked, who spends his 30s in the same place he spent his 20s, named and unhealed. The second direction is the manosphere direction. Your father failed you, the system failed you, the culture failed you. Rage is the response. Transgression is the proof of survival. This is also a trap. A man who has built his identity entirely around grievance is still controlled by the very thing he claims to have escaped. Legacy Gentleman holds a third position. It is not therapeutic and it is not reactionary. It is forward. The fatherless man has a calling, not a consolation prize, a calling. And it is this: he gets to be the first in his line who chose to father himself and then to father others. He does not carry on a pattern, he creates one. Everything he builds from here, the standard he sets, the way he carries himself, the character he forms in private, and the legacy he leaves in public, is new. It did not come from his father, it comes from him. So what does it look like, practically and concretely, to father yourself? The first thing a man must do is give himself the words a father was supposed to give him. A father's job, among other things, is to name his son. Not just to discipline him or provide for him, but to name him. To say, you are capable, you are meant for something. Your presence matters. Your standard matters. Many of you never received that. The vacuum that creates is real. Men who are not sure they have permission to take up space, to lead, to hold a standard, because no authoritative voice ever told them they did. The practice of self-fathering begins here. You must say those things to yourself, not as therapeutic affirmation designed to feel good, but as conviction, a settled decision about who you are and what you are called to. You are not waiting for someone to give you permission. You are granting it from a place of judgment and intention. This is not arrogance. Arrogance claims more than you've earned. This is stewardship. You are taking responsibility for your own development because no one else is coming to do it for you. The second thing is to build the structure a father was supposed to model. A present father models structure without always naming it. He wakes at a certain time. He handles difficulty a certain way. He treats the people around him according to a visible code. The son who observes this absorbs it without necessarily being instructed. The fatherless man did not have that absorption. He must build consciously what others absorbed passively. This means designing your own operating code, not from a YouTube list or a podcast framework, but from a deliberate examination of what kind of man you are choosing to be. What does this man do when he is tired and no one is watching? What does he do when he is tempted and no one will know? What does he do when the situation is unfair and rage would be understandable? The answers are the code. And the code must be built intentionally because it was not given. Proverbs 4 is a father instructing a son in exactly this: the building of a code. Hold on to instruction. Do not let it go. Guard it well, for it is your life. For the man who had no father, the instruction must be self-sought. He must go and find it in Scripture, in the great men of history, in mentors he pursues rather than waiting to receive. The third thing, and the most important, is to become the father he never had for someone else. Because the fatherless man who only internalizes the work, who heals himself, builds himself, governs himself, but does it entirely for his own formation, has missed the calling within the calling. The man who has no father has particular authority over other fatherless men. When he speaks to that experience, the absence, the uncertainty, the lack of a template, he speaks with credibility that cannot be manufactured. And that authority is not for his benefit. It is for the men coming behind him who are in the same place he started. Psalm 68:5 calls God a father to the fatherless. The way God fathers the fatherless man is, in part, through men who are willing to be that presence for others. The fatherless man who rises is not just surviving his own story. He is participating in the answer to someone else's. I want to say something directly before I close. If you are carrying the weight of a father who was not there, whether he was absent entirely or present in a way that hurt more than helped, I am not asking you to minimize that. The loss is real. The gap it created is real. And the work of forming yourself without that foundation is genuinely harder than forming yourself with it. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. But I am also asking you not to let the absence become the whole story, because the story you are in is not finished. And the man you are choosing to become, the one you are constructing deliberately in the absence of a template, with intention and faith and a willingness to sit with hard questions, that man is not a diminished version of the man who was handed everything. In some ways, he is the stronger version, because everything he has, he chose. You were not given the script, write it. And when you have written it, hand it to someone who needs it. That is legacy.